Hi, and welcome to this new series called Scott Answers Your Tech and Media Questions. I know it's not catchy, but when I was trying to put this together, I thought maybe I can come up with a cool jingle that reflects technology and somehow explains what this is. This is what I came up with. And as you can see, it's not super catchy, but the cool thing about it is it's using my voice to do what's called granular sampling. And this is a technique that a lot of contemporary sound folks and music folks are using to adjust their sounds and to come up with some new variations on sound. And so it's pretty appropriate that we're talking about that today, at least for the sake of this topic. Now, the other cool thing is this represents a really rare convergence of my job working with faculty on training and also working with my students in the anthropology of music and sound class. So this is really intended for both audiences out there. If you're a student, I recommend you jump to part 2, which focuses only on audio. If you're faculty, you can begin here with part 1, talking about video and audio, and then also watch along with our students part 2 that talks about audio. So the goal of today is to talk about approaches to using sound in your classes, whether you're teaching a class or one of your class projects. So here in part 1, we're talking about recording sound and video. And thank you to the science faculty member who asked for this particular training and had a concern about this, because I was able to put this together, and as I said, it's really an opportunity to talk to the faculty out there and also to the students out there who are working on class projects that may involve using devices like this, which are sound field recorders. So for part 1 here, let's talk about your options of recording that will involve both sound and video. Now, a great example of this is our chemistry professor, Sean Ryland, who has his YouTube channel pictured here, and you can reach out to him for that address. But what I like about this is he's using a webcam, and again, a lot of us have webcams on our computers. You can buy an external webcam if you don't have one. You can literally be teaching our class in one of the classrooms at the college, plug in the webcam, load it up to Zoom, load it up to YouTube to do a live stream, and everything is recorded for you. So this is really easy because you're getting audio and video at the same time, so you don't have to have a separate audio recorder. Now, keep in mind with anything we talk about today, there's always a chance that your audio quality won't be great if you're using your built-in microphone from your computer or an external mic. So one of the things to think about with quality is to maybe do a test run and see if it sounds good, if you think it's usable for your upload, which we'll talk about later. So the quality issue is always going to depend on the computer you're using, the microphone, the camera setup, and so forth. For example, the camera right here is an incredible camera called the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, but it doesn't do good audio. So whenever I use this to do a recording like this, I have an external mic, and then what I'm going to do is sync the audio that is created here, called a scratch track, with the audio here, and that's super easy to do. If any of you want tips on syncing audio and video in an editor like Final Cut Pro, an NLE, or nonlinear editor, just let me know and we can have a side conversation. So I'm not sure what Sean is using, but I've looked at the quality of it on YouTube and I really like his approach. And the fact that these are available very quickly for his students after he gives a lecture is also really good and responsive for students who might have missed the class or who missed a point in the lecture and they want to go back and do a rewind, so to speak. They can do that all here on YouTube. You can also do this in Canvas Studio. We'll talk about that a little later in this video. So your goal, again, is to live stream your lecture or record the lecture, and then you'll upload it to YouTube or Canvas Studio. Canvas Studio is really easy to use. If you're familiar with it by now, you know that it's a great opportunity to use it in a way that makes videos easy to upload and work with, and also accessible to students or colleagues. Because of the fact that you can create your own collections, you could organize all your videos by classes. I'll show you later if you just want to do audio recording that is, say, captured on a SD card from an audio recorder like this one, this Tascam. You can also upload that to the media section here in Canvas Studio. Canvas Studio is really easy to use, and as a result, if you don't want to mess with getting set up with YouTube, and I do have some videos on helping you set up your own YouTube channel, so check those out. But this is so easy to use that I can easily recommend this as your one-stop shop for every audio and video file that you might be loading into your class to share with students. And one of the things I really like about doing the audio plus video recording is it's great for any demonstrations that you have. For example, very recently in this Anthropology of Music and Sound class that I'm talking about today, I wanted to really demo some approaches to homemade instruments. And this would not be the kind of thing that would work only with audio. Yes, I could record my narration. I could also record these instruments being played. But the hands-on component of this is really key. So I definitely think it's important to think about what you're trying to accomplish in your lecture. If you want to show a lot of hands-on things like in chemistry or a science class or maybe a lot of other classes as well, definitely want to incorporate audio and video. And by the way, in all the stuff we're talking about today, make sure you check in with Kelly and the folks at the DRC to be very sure that all the accommodations for our students with disabilities have been made, and we can talk about that as well offline. So to do this, to record audio and video, you'll of course need a camera. The camera could be your phone. The phone is very handy because sometimes it has really good quality. We'll talk about this later, but if it's an iPhone or really any standard phone, there are some super cheap adapters that you can get to mount on either a microphone stand or a camera stand. The threads are a little bit different, and reach out if you have questions, because I am certainly someone that has every adapter in the book in terms of microphone and camera stands, because I sometimes will have a boom set up, not unlike something like my microphone that's right here, that allows me to customize it in terms of the position. But you definitely might need a few items like this just to get your camera in a place where it's mountable. Just throwing it on top of a book on a desk or something, it might fall over. It's not the best option. And these are super cheap on Amazon, so again, reach out if you have questions. Now, I say in here, you might possibly also need a microphone. It really depends on the audio quality. If you set up a camera to record and it has good audio, then by all means go for it. I have this particular action cam here that I sometimes use, made by DJI. It's called the Osmo Pocket, and they do a lot of drones. And this has decent audio, but when I want to use it, I just get my adapter, I plug in a microphone, which could be a lavalier microphone, which is super handy. Some of these have a built-in really gain adjustment or preamplifier that takes some small batteries, so there are different types. The one thing you do have to remember is you sometimes will need an adapter to plug into the device that you're choosing. Again, I can't really go through all those because there's so many different adapters and proprietary tech out there that really requires you to get the brand name of what you're using. So if I want an adapter for this, I put the exact name of this DJI Pocket Osmo. There's different versions, so it would be version 1. Go to Amazon or my favorite website, look for that, and all the various adapters will come up. But just be sure to put the exact name of the camera or device that you're trying to get an adapter for or a microphone for, because it really does matter, because there's so many different choices out there to look at. Also, if you're using one of these microphones and you wonder that you have 2 lines on here versus 3, typically this third line is for a smartphone, because you can control the call, you can start and stop it, you can sometimes dial, just depends on the feature of your smartphone. If you see just 2 lines on here, that's your typical stereo audio, where you have that on most plugs that you work with. If you have a mono cable, then you're only going to have 1, right? So this is for my Eurorack setup that just has 1 line on there, which is for monophonic sound. So it just kind of depends, but reach out. It's very likely I've seen the cable or adapter in question. The rumor has it is I've been known to collect some technology around these parts. So definitely reach out if you have questions. But think about the quality of the microphone. Again, if you record it and you play it back on your computer, some computers have decent speakers like this computer does, and I actually sometimes use it to monitor. Or I will put on my trusty headphones because you know you're going to get the best possible sound reproduced, say, in headphones. Make sure you monitor the sound that you're recording, if it's your voice. If it doesn't sound good to you in those monitoring approaches you take, it probably means you need to go back to the beginning and look at the quality of the microphone that you're using. And then as I say lastly here, we'll talk about later, you'll want to upload your final video to Canvas Studio or YouTube. This will vary with device to device. If it's a smartphone, typically you will send that to your computer, maybe using like AirDrop or Bluetooth, depending if you're Android or Mac. If it's a camera like something like my Action Cam, this uses, just like my field recorder, an SD card, a much faster version of an SD card. And by the way, if you get involved in buying something for a camera, you really need a super fast write speed and read speed. So something like 70 to 90, maybe even higher megabytes per second versus a card that you get for an audio recorder. The files here in a video camera are much more intensive in terms of processing and storage size than you get with audio. And if you've compared video and audio files, you know that that's really the case. So just something to think about. If you're getting an SD card, you want to make sure that it's going to work actually with your device. Depending on the device, if I'm buying a flash drive, say from a mixer, I have to actually look at a chart online that describes which flash drive will actually work with my mixer. It's not like one size fits all. So if you get into any buying of SD cards or whatever, reach out and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you because I've been through that whole process of buying SD cards for various devices. Also keep in mind, if you go to ltccteachingandlearning.com, I have a very extensive training page for you. This is a PDF that has all of these areas covered, everything from location video to FERPA, creating a video in under 5 minutes, all the Zoom questions and so forth. So check this out for more in-depth discussion of all of these topics that are listed here on this page. Okay, so welcome to part 2 of this video. If you're my students in the Anthropology of Music and Sound, we're talking here about doing field recording. So field recording is a technique that uses any number of devices. It could be a cell phone. It could also be a field recorder that comes in different shapes and sizes, to record ambient sound of nature, to record sounds of, say, the city, if you're doing some experimental music, creating sound effects. Someone in the film industry might use this for what we call Foley work, which is the sound effects that you often hear in a lot of motion pictures. And of course, if you're a faculty member or a student, you might be using a voice recorder to record your voice, not unlike the way that I'm recording it here with this high quality microphone and mixer set up. But you're doing this for the purpose of maybe sharing that audio later with an audience. So that is kind of the approach we're looking at today. The goal here is very simple, not so simple when we get into the mechanics of it, but simple enough to say that it's recording sound, editing it later, possibly, or making some minor adjustments. We'll talk about that using a program that's free called Audacity, and then uploading it to a website, uploading it somewhere so that you can share it with the outside world. If you're curious about this, I recommend you go online and type in field recording. You'll hear a lot of different people talking about field recording. And it's really a science and a technological approach that evolves over time. I was looking just today on my shelf with some of my old technology. This is a super old device that used to be used by social scientists. It's so cool looking and vintage. It actually has a reel. And you can see here it has a reel with magnetic tape, and that cartridge goes in like such, and then it has a microphone. I just love this. It's so cool. It looks like something out of Star Trek. And the idea behind this is you would record with it, and not the easiest thing to use, and then play it, and you can also rewind. And there's nothing on here. It's just some staticky sound. But this kind of just shows you how far we've come in terms of technology. Now a lot of the stuff that we have is digital. So if you're at all curious about this, go online and look up field recording. Students in the Anthropology of Music and Sound class have readings and other videos that talks about the whole process of doing field recording and storing audio in archives like those at the Archives of Traditional Music at Indiana University, where I worked ages ago and where I was a student in the ethnomusicology program. So it's very interesting to get in the technology side of this, because sometimes the technology is driving the end product or even the process. Again, I will say throughout the talk today that audio quality does matter. So if you're doing field recording of any sort, whether it relates to your voice or ambient sounds of nature or of the city, think about the quality and the technology. So the first thing to remember here is that different microphones and sound recording devices have different purposes. So you definitely want to identify what you're trying to do. Are you trying to capture your voice? In which case you might want a lavalier microphone, which you can clip onto your collar, your shirt or whatever, and it's going to give you a lot of presence when you speak into your microphone. There are also studio microphones like this we use for recording vocals, for recording instrument tracks, and indeed different microphones have different approaches and are used for different purposes. Some microphones like desktop USB microphones can be very good because they allow you to make adjustments to the quality of the sound or the type of sound you're trying to create or record. Very expensive microphones have capsules or inserts that change the quality of the microphone, so it really does depend on the purpose of your recording. These actually are microphones. These are little piezo discs, which are contact microphones, and these allow me to pick up vibrations and not sound through the air that my traditional microphones would involve. I also have microphones like these, which I can use to record in all places inside of water. So this is specially designed to allow me to record sounds in water, which again could be really useful for someone doing Foley work or sound effects. Again, I really recommend the clip-on microphone like this, a lapel or lavalier mic, because it's very easy to use. They come with super long cords. They do get tangled, so if you're doing something quick, you sometimes run into this where you can't untangle them quickly. Again, if you're doing that to record it into a cell phone using an app like this particular voice record app, definitely check on your adapters. You will need adapters depending on the phone. As well, if you're using your sound recorder, what's nice about some of these is they have external mics that are often in this stereo array. Sometimes they're adjustable, so these are pretty handy, including like if you're at a concert. And then they typically will have a pretty handy microphone auxiliary in that allows me to plug in something like this. I really warn you though, if you try to use some of these, depending on the tips, and again what they're designed for, you might need an adapter. In this case, I would need an adapter to convert it to stereo input. So it's not always that easy. And as a result of this, you can probably go on to Amazon, I would recommend, and really kind of seek out the microphone for the device. Again, they often go together or can go together if you have the right adapters or connectors. So reach out if you have questions about that. So again, the right microphone, the right device for the purpose, whatever you're trying to record, you would really want to think about that and then take it from there. And this just shows you some other examples. Again, contact microphones. There's even devices out there. This is made by a company in Moscow called Soma Laboratories. And this is like an anti-radio. It actually picks up all the frequencies of electronic devices. So people go around, sound engineers go around and record sounds of lights and trains and different electronic objects that produce noise that isn't audible unless you make it audible by amplifying it with this device called the ether. So a lot of different approaches out there. Okay, so in the regard of having different microphones or devices for different purposes, let's take a look real quick at what we might get out of our recording if we use 3 different recording approaches. So one here is using a high quality microphone and mixer and post-production, which is coming out of this microphone and going into my mixer over here that you can't see. Actually, you can see it. It's off screen there, but it's kind of flashing. So this is a high-tech setup and not something typically you would do. I've actually used this setup for radio interviews that I've done where we would do it over the phone, but I would simultaneously record using my microphone. I sent that into this podcast I did for the Wondery, and then they were able to sync it with the audio that they ran in their studio of the interviewer. So that's actually one example of how I've used this. Again, this setup is probably not something you're going to typically do for your classroom lectures or if you're doing field recordings for your class projects like in anthropology, sound, and music. You want portability. You want something that you can take with you and not something that's going to tie you down to all this equipment and technology and, of course, power. So portability is a key concern if you're interested in doing something on the fly, whether you're a faculty member recording a lecture in your class or you're a student trying to maybe go out and collect some field recordings for your music project. So in any case, why don't we take these three, and I'll set them up here, and we're just going to record using the three different devices, and you can hear what this sounds like as a, really I intend this as a point of comparison with our three different approaches. So for this comparison, we'll use our two field recorders, our official Tascam field recorder, the iPhone Voice Pro app, which is free to download, and then my nice blue microphone and mixer here, which I will take the audio file from and run it into my computer. And as you might expect, I have something that is really useful for a test like this, and this is a karimba or kalimba. And what's nice about this is there's a lot of buzz to it, and as I'm playing it, you'll really, I think, get a sense of the sensitivity of the playing and how these devices work differently. So my goal behind this is just to show you that every device I record with has a different approach, if you will, in terms of what it's able to pick up, the quality of the recording, even the internal compression done with any of these devices. We're taking signals and translating them into a digital file, either on this flash drive or in the phone, or on my recorder in the form of an SD card that sits in the side. So everything we're doing here, of course, is being converted to digital information. So I'll play this and you'll get a sense of just how each of the recordings handles this particular sound. So hopefully this will give you a sense just that there are different approaches that you can take. And again, what I recommend throughout this video is that you really think about the specific context of what you're trying to accomplish with your recording, whether you're trying to record something just using your voice or recording something more sensitive that could have frequencies or harmonics or timbral qualities that will require a higher end recorder just to pick up the specific sounds. Keep in mind that if you use something like your iPhone, even though the technology has gotten better over the years, both in terms of video and audio, these are never perfect in terms of producing the kind of audio that you can get out of studio microphones or even field recorders. And that's one reason, again, that you might think about going with something like this, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, either recording a lecture or recording something in a field setting in terms of audio and sound. And one of the cool things about sound design is people have figured out ways, and this will be interesting for students in the anthropology of music and sound, they've figured out ways to create instruments using sound effects or field recording. So this is someone who took the ambient sound of, looks like a New York morning, and you can't see it here, but I have just below the screen a keyboard I'm playing on, so you can actually take sound effects from the environment or field recordings and pitch them. And so this is the sound of nature. and you can control different aspects of the sound and adjust it in different ways. So it's just pretty interesting to think about how field recording is not just useful, say, for recording the pure sounds, but then manipulating the sounds. In fact, at the end of this section, we'll talk just a little bit about how you might process some of your sounds, because one of the challenges, as I'll show you with a real sample of recording the environment around us, is sometimes we're not able to pick up exactly what we want to pick up, or we get a lot of competing sounds. I have a friend who's a film creator, director, runs a video company, and we're actually collaborating on a film project where I'm doing some audio and music for him. And we were talking about how he'll be out in a field situation. He's trying to record dialogue of two characters in his film, and literally there'll be sounds of lawnmowers, airplanes, helicopters, traffic from the toll road close to the filming location. And so he's using a lot of the websites that you can click on and check out online that use artificial intelligence to remove all the sounds that are not vocal sounds or dialogue sounds. The AI revolution in sound and technology and audio production, as students in our class have been talking about and reading about, is really revolutionizing the industry in terms of being able to go back and take really bad audio, take out the reverb or the echoes, take out those non-vocal sounds that are competing with your dialogue in a film or in a speech or whatever. So pretty revolutionary to think about what is available out there. A lot of that is probably beyond what you're going to be doing, but again, good audio quality matters. And if you don't have quality audio, I think generally audiences are less forgiving about audio than they are about shaky video. So a lot of us record things on our phones, and sometimes if it's a moving or action shot, it's a little shaky. I think audiences don't mind that as much. When you get bad audio that's really muffled or has a lot of hiss or noise to it, then I think people will tune out. And one of the things, if you're teaching and listening to this video, that's important is to engage with students and audiences in your professional work. It's really important to have that good audio, because sometimes someone hears from the beginning bad audio and they turn off the lecture, the recording, whatever it happens to be. Now, we can talk about different situations of using, say, different approaches to audio. So you can use a professional microphone and mixer like the setup I have here, but in all honesty, if you're recording even at home for your class lectures, or if you're a student, you might not have access to this. Faculty probably don't have access to some of this equipment, so probably don't want to go that route. I really recommend the next two routes as the main audio approaches we'll talk about. So one is using your phone, whether an iPhone or an Android, and downloading a free app. This is one of my favorite ones. It's free audio recorder. It allows me to make recordings. I'll show you a sample of this later, and I can share them with myself online, share them to my computer, and then use them later. The second option would be to use something like this Tascam. And I'll show you some other options out there. Zoom makes some really good ones as well. This is a field recorder. It uses a small SD card, and the SD cards sometimes come with the units or they're super cheap to buy. And you'll want to use an SD card adapter. So the SD cards are really small. These can get lost. I definitely recommend getting a nice container to store them in. But you'll put it inside of this when we're at that stage where we want to upload our sound to our computer and then share it with typically the files tab or section inside of Canvas, or using Canvas Studio to upload that as an audio media file. So really cheap, easy to lose, so make sure you keep track of them. Basically, what's going to happen is you'll record all of your sounds on this sound device, either using the external microphones, which tend to be very good on these, or plugging in a microphone. Again, a lavalier or lapel microphone can be handy. Rode, which is a really good company that does a lot of audio and video production related technology, has actually wireless devices that are pretty cool. They're Bluetooth enabled, and you would clip the device to you or have it near you, maybe on a stand, and we'll talk about stands later. These are really handy because they allow you, most of these audio adapters, every one I've seen, allows you to plug it into, or rather screw it into, one of these microphone stands, or this is actually a camera stand with that particular thread. And then you can place it anywhere. This is one of those Gorilla stands that can either be a traditional desktop tripod, or you can attach it to surfaces where it clamps on, and it's really easy to put it, say, on a pole or something if you're doing field recording, and then it could easily pick up whatever it is you're trying to record. These vary in terms of the features. There are much better ones out there with higher quality, but the basic one, whether it's a Tascam or a Zoom, that's around $100 or even less, is really decent. One of the things I like about these over or in lieu of or instead of a phone is you can do much more. The microphones are a little better, and you could do much more with your gain adjustment and what's called a limiter. One of the challenges is sometimes you're recording something, it's either too loud or too soft, and that's going to make for the requirement, really, as we'll talk about later, of doing something in post or post-production to boost that sound, to amplify it, to increase the gain so that we can actually listen to it later. These have a lot of that built in. They have auto level adjustments. High-end ones that are used by filmmakers will actually record two versions or two passes of a sound, a really high amplified version and a low one, and then kind of average the two. And so you can almost have a situation where people could scream into a microphone, it would adjust for that, or they could whisper and get really quiet, and it would adjust for that. In this particular case, recording this, if I wanted to adjust me whispering or talking quieter, I would have to do that in post-production. Most of you probably don't want to do that, whether you're doing a project for your class or you're recording a lecture as a faculty member. So these are super handy because they take a lot of the work and do it for you. The guesswork is pretty minimal because they're very automated. So I would say for our purposes to think about either using your phone or using a dedicated field recorder. Some different considerations to think about, conditions and context. I'll show you a sample using this later. You might think it's great to use your phone to record stuff, but if you're holding onto the phone and you're fidgeting with it, doing something like this, as you'll hear in my sample, which was accidental, but it's a great kind of learning opportunity for us, your audio quality, your recording might be doomed because you're touching your phone. If you're trying to record something that's way outside your field of view, and you're using your iPhone or even a field recorder for that matter, like our Tascam here, and there's a lot of noise in the environment in front of you, as you'll see from my sample using Voice Recorder Pro on my phone, you're also not going to get a good quality recording. Now, if you're a faculty member and you're recording something at your desk and you want to record your lecture as you go through some topics, and you have this sitting in front of you, maybe you stick it on a stand so that you get the microphones, fairly close to your voice where you're speaking to get that nice presence, you're probably going to be in good shape. What I always do if I'm recording something here, I, of course, will take the phone out of the office. If a helicopter or a truck drives by, I pause and I restart. If you don't want to do any editing, though, it does get a little tricky because some glitches can come up. And actually, you could say, well, because I don't want to edit my audio later and have to take out those glitches, I'm just going to leave them in. I think that's perfectly fine. You could do that. So think about the conditions and context of your recording, where you're going to be recording, what you're trying to accomplish. What's the desired quality? Do you want really high-end quality? If you're picky like me and you want your narration to have a lot of presence in terms of the voice when speaking, then think appropriately and purchase appropriately. Again, most of this probably will not be allowed through the LTCC budget process. I don't know from department to department, but that is a consideration. So if you have budgetary issues that you're dealing with and you can't afford a field recorder at this point in your life, whether you're working as a student doing this or faculty member, then go with what you have right now. If you have a smartphone, there are free apps available. They're not really that bad. They can actually do some really good audio quality. And so think about these issues as you make your purchasing decisions. Now, let me show you right now a sample I recorded using Voice Record Pro. Again, this is a free app. It's pretty basic. You record, you stop, you play. You can do some minor adjustments to sound, not that much. You can choose how to save the file as far as the format. I'll talk about this later. I recommend saving things as a WAV, a WAV file, or an AIFF file. That's going to give you your highest quality. When you get into M4As, when you get into MP3s, which we are familiar with on some of our streaming services, you really lose a lot of that quality of sound. What happens is the audio is compressed, and this is actually kind of controversial with the audiophile community, which will be interesting to our students in our class here, where people feel like, the old days of playing things on a record player or a phonograph or even a compact disc were much better than some of the streaming things we hear on our phones and devices. And the deal is we're sacrificing quality for storage space. Because you want to be able to hear something stream over Spotify on your internet radio or smart device, you're sacrificing a little bit of quality because you don't want to have a giant phone that requires more memory and storage and is more expensive, we compress the files to MP3s or M4As on here. And as a result, we're saving space, though losing some of the audio quality. So let's look at the sample here. This is Voice Record Pro. And I was actually walking to my car in the parking lot, and one of our soccer teams, the men or the women, I forget which one, were out there playing. And there was this, I guess it was doing like circuit training where people were running the length of part of the soccer field. So I recorded this and I thought, oh, this could be an interesting sound that I could use because it kind of had like a robot voice to it, and I just kind of immediately connected to it. So the scenario here is I don't have a video, but I want to explain this because you'll get a sense of why some of this audio is kind of a little bit messy or has some external noise to it or other sounds I didn't intend. And by the way, this is from Audacity, which is a program that's free to use, free to download, which I recommend. I use literally this 7 days a week for any audio production I'm doing. When you see spikes and so forth like these, you know that something has happened in your recording, that maybe you bumped your microphone or phone, or there was a loud sound. You sometimes will hit the surface of something. If I bang against my mic, that's going to happen, and I have to either edit that out or leave it there. So I'll play through this right now, and as you hear it, listen for some of those errors. Listen for the scenario. I'm walking up to my car, and I'm holding my phone like this. I'm also kind of fussing with my bag because I'm like, oh, I want to record this sound coming from the soccer field. But because I'm messing with my bag on my shoulder, I eventually put my phone down on the car and just kind of let it go. So the first part here that you'll get, and these are all seconds on Audacity, so through the first minute it's very noisy. Then I set the phone down, I think probably over here, those are those spikes in the audio, and then this is their narration that you get. And as I play through this, just listen to the quality of the audio and what you hear, and this will give you a sense of some of the good things and the bad things about recording using a cell phone.
Start level 7, 1. Level 7, 2. Level 7, 4. Level 7, 5. Level 7, 6. Level 7, 7. Level 7, 8. Level 7, 9. Level 7, 10. Start level 8, 1. Level 8, 2. Level 8, 3. Level 8, 4. Level 8, 5.
Okay, so you had a chance to hear that recording, and I wanted to play that all the way through because I think it's really instructive of some of the challenges that you get when you're using a cell phone to record. Now, obviously, if you're recording something in a field setting or you're recording a lecture, you're not going to be fumbling with your phone. I was walking to my car. You hear probably through the 1 minute mark just different sounds of me beeping my keys. You also heard the door slamming, and these, again, peaks in the audio are picked up by the microphone. And again, those kind of anomalies or mistakes, if you're doing this professionally, you would want to avoid that, or you can edit that out in post-production. You can actually do a lot with Audacity. I'll show you later with editing and also raising the gain adjustment. You can also do some equalization, which could be handy if there's like a lot of hiss you notice or a low rumble. You can easily take that out with EQ, and you don't have to be a sound engineer to get that done. The other thing you heard is from the 1:30 mark forward, you might have heard some little drops or little low kind of sounds of something hitting. I think it was actually drizzling that day. So the funny thing was, I had this set on my car on the hood, and I was recording it, and then the drops as they're hitting the car were being picked up by the microphone. So again, there's a lot of unintentional sounds that you hear, and students in the Anthropology of Music and Sound class, we've been talking about all the environmental sounds around us, whether there's a fan or a hiss from your computer or different sounds that you don't think of typically, but you might think of once you sort of engage and start to listen to the environment. And we've read a little bit and listened to the experimental composer John Cage's famous piece, 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which involves the performer sitting at the piano for that amount of time, not playing a single sound on the piano. And the whole point of that sound, as people have interpreted it as a conceptual piece, is it's really trying to get you to hone in on all the sounds in your ambient worlds of music and audio that you typically don't think about or even pay attention to. Once you start doing this audio and field recording, I think you'll start to hear more of these and you'll be more in tune with it and say, well, I really want to avoid this situation. If I'm recording something that's a podcast that happens in a cafe or takes place somewhere that I need to be in that place because I'm interviewing people, it's very important to be in that space, maybe because they're available to be guests on my podcast. Well, I have to think about all the competing sounds in the audio world that might make my recording more challenging for my listeners to hear later. So it's one of the things that you notice when you do a recording and when you bring a sound like this in, and it's very easy to do, by the way, as you can see on the screen here. You'll just take this file, which is not super big. I think this one I recorded was close to 30 megabytes, a WAV file. And then I just share it with my computer, and then I can bring it into a program like Audacity. So think about the conditions, because again, I would say that this is not my first go-to choice when I want audio. It's typically doing something here in my studio. If you don't have a studio space, then again, I really do recommend a field recorder for some of these higher quality audio opportunities that are out there. Now again, you heard in the recording the sound of me touching the phone, and then that voice, which was what I was really trying to capture, is very quiet. I can do some gain adjustment. That could add some noise to my mix. So sometimes you increase the amplitude or volume of your sound that you've recorded and discover that you've introduced more frequencies into the mix that can really make it more challenging for someone to listen to just because of a level adjustment that you did. The other thing I should say is I wasn't directly next to our soccer field recording this. That would have made the audio a lot higher quality. So it's also an opportunity to think about your field conditions and what you want to do and accomplish. Let's jump on to equipment here. And the first question I really recommend you answer is, are you just doing this for field recordings? Do you want to do other musical or podcast projects? Because really, depending on what you want to do, this is going to determine what you end up purchasing. The faculty member who asked for some information about this said that she was planning on maybe also recording music. If that's the case, if you're doing music and you're doing your voice, then I think you probably definitely want to stay away from something like using an iPhone. Now, the iPhones are getting better, Android phones are getting better, so it could be the case that, a couple years from now, we actually do have higher quality mics or external mics that you can plug in and really get great quality audio recording. If you ever have questions about this and you're thinking about purchasing a phone, Google that phone and specifically add something like, say, iPhone 13 and audio. iPhone 13 and audio recording is even better, because that way you'll get customized information online on Reddit or other technology boards, the sorts that I read daily, that give me a sense of exactly what the field is saying about the value of a certain device, in this case for recording audio. So definitely like crowdsource the reviews and technology community out there, because they're really wonderful and they will help you out immensely. If you're thinking about different purposes, if you're doing a podcast versus a film versus a multi-track, multi-microphone recording, or doing computer music, then you definitely want to think about something that's going to allow you to do more of those things. Again, if you're doing something like a podcast, and you want to have, as they show here, multiple microphones going, Zoom, the company that makes audio devices here, has some really wonderful recorders. My film friend said he has one of these F6s, and it's absolutely amazing for doing a super high quality film production. It allows you to plug in multiple microphones, and you can monitor and really control, again, the gain, the audio quality, the levels from the get-go, and you don't have to do as much work in post-production. You can also look at something like their newer H8, which you see pictured here. You can get different microphone capsules for it, attachments. It has a touch screen. It has a lot of features, and you can plug in multiple microphones. So if you're doing a podcast that's going to involve multiple people sitting around a table, definitely look at something like this. If you want to record audio in a field setting, maybe because you're going to concerts and want to record, or you want to record lectures, you probably could get away with a lower end version like this, which is a Tascam, more around $100, than having to get one of these that has phantom power. Phantom power, by the way, for microphones like these, is a power source that, to power the microphone, goes through the microphone cable, and you have to specifically have a device that has phantom power built in to power your microphone. So these have them built in, but again, if you're wondering, well, what is phantom power, and do I need to buy a fancy microphone that uses what's called an XLR cable? You definitely don't, but it just depends on what you're trying to achieve and what your goals are. If you want to do computer music, if you want to do recording that involves a program like Logic Pro or GarageBand or Fruity Loops or whatever, then definitely get something that will allow you to plug in to your computer what's called the USB adapter. And this one actually I don't think has it. It has a USB hookup, but I don't think it allows you to use this as an audio interface. For the Zooms like these, the H8 and some other low-end models, you can plug it into your computer and it serves multiple purposes. So it'll allow you to take acoustic instruments from your microphone, like if you're recording a guitar or a kalimba, as I show you here, and it allows you to really pick up those sounds and then process it inside of your computer. If you're interested in any of this, reach out and I'd be happy to answer some questions. For those of you planning on doing any kind of field recording for your music and sound class, it's perfectly fine to use your phone. I think you're going to be okay. Just make sure that you don't make some of those placement or sound errors that I made in my demo here, because I think it really does matter in terms of the field settings. Now, you can also, if you have one of these or think about maybe wanting to buy one of these for other purposes, these will also, of course, do a great job in terms of any of your field settings. If you're doing podcasts, by the way, they're now making specific podcast production centers. These, in some cases, could be portable, but one of the things you want to think about is power. If you have to plug anything in, like a lot of these units, that may not be useful for a field setting, and that's why phones and these field recorders are super handy, because they don't require external power other than their batteries, whatever they've been charged with, or the batteries that they use, and it makes it a lot more portable to go into the field. So these podcast setups are really great. You can do effects with vocals. That could be really cool if you're doing like a podcast on Spotify or iTunes or whatever. But the challenge of these is really they're designed for home use in a studio plugged in, not really for portability where you need power and other things to make it work. So if you're thinking about equipment, really you can think about these issues or contexts I have up here. By the way, for buying any of this equipment, Amazon, B&H Photo, Musician's Friend, Sweetwater are all good choices. They vary. You can look at, tax and how much they charge for shipping and all that kind of stuff. And depending on your politics, you can also decide where you want to shop, because I know a lot of people have concerns about where they purchase their items, and that's certainly legit. So let me just show you this one site here from Zoom that shows you all their handheld recorders. The one I'm really thinking some of you might be happy with would be their H1N. And this one is their 2-track audio recorder. It's very similar to the Tascam. What you can do is just click on it and learn all about the recording quality. I really like the design of Zoom products. I used to have an earlier version. It was, I think, a 4-track recorder that I sold, and I just bought the Tascam because I didn't need such a fancy recorder at the time for the purposes. But you can see these all have displays. They tell you what you're recording. There's a lot of settings you can choose. So you can put on a limiter or an auto level. So if a loud sound kind of pops, like I showed you on the cell phone, it's going to adjust for that. It's going to adjust for low audio. If you're in a room and someone's speaking really quiet, you can make an adjustment on the fly on the Tascam. It'll be hard for you to see this, but I can press this button here, and then it's going to increase the gain. And that's telling the device to try to do a better job of picking up that low volume audio of the speaker in a room. So it's one of the reasons I like these over the cell phone option. Is it's really more automated and it has better features, and in all honesty it has better quality audio, just because there's so much that we're trying to do in one space of a smartphone device like a cell phone, like my iPhone, that sometimes you can't do everything well, so you just kind of do a lot of things okay or fairly good, if that makes sense. You can see there's different opportunities to record in different formats. Nowadays, you can record all the way up to 96 kilohertz, which is really high quality. I record typically on my music stuff that I'm doing on my computer in 44.1 or 48 kilohertz. It's even now moved up to 24-bit audio, so it's a higher quality audio than our traditional 16-bit that we record in. Again, I don't really recommend going for the MP3. WAV files are not that big. If a short recording is around 20, 30 megabytes, that's nothing compared to a really large multi-gigabyte video file. So don't worry about going down to the MP3, because you really do lose the quality with that compression process that is saving space in lieu of preserving audio quality. So definitely I would not recommend going with the MP3 format. Again, these are the other versions. So if you want to go up in quality, you want to do surround sound, you can go with the H2N. If you want to do multi-track, connect your computer, higher quality audio, you want to have multiple microphones, including phantom powered XLR microphones like this one, then you'd obviously have to go up in price. So that's kind of your first consideration, is to really look at what type of recorder you want. Second thing is, again, you might possibly need an external microphone. If you're a student in this class and you're doing field recordings using your phone or using your field recorder that you might happen to have, don't worry about an external microphone. If you are interested as a faculty member in recording one of your lectures, and that's all you're doing, you're not getting the sound of your students in the classroom, then the lavalier mic is really handy, because you get a lot of presence recording it this way, so close to your vocal apparatuses here, that you'll get much higher quality in your end product. There are devices out there that if you're interested in recording for an entire room, I could point you to some microphones on Amazon that will do a much better job. You would not want to use a lavalier microphone for that. You'd want to use an omnidirectional mic that's going to pick up audio more in a plane, in sort of a circle around the microphone, and that's going to give you an opportunity to pick up all of the speakers, say at a seminar table in a class or something of that nature. You might also get some adapters. Again, reach out if you have questions about adapters for your phones or other microphones, and then pick up some of these stands. Again, I really recommend that you seriously consider a small tripod. If you're using an iPhone, you'll just attach this here, and it's so easy to use. You're going to have a steady camera if you're recording video. If you're recording audio, it's also good to have one of these, because it allows you to really make your device more steady on a surface. It's not going to be bumped around like in my example using the cell phones. As I mentioned earlier, if you need adapters, I can easily convert from I can't recall the size of each, but I can easily convert from, say, my tripod microphone stands to my camera stands and back forth. So I just went onto Amazon and bought a series of these. They're all interchangeable. You have male and female ends, and they're easy to use, and they allow you to customize every tripod, every boom stand, every microphone or camera stand that you have in your arsenal. So I really recommend some of those adapters if you want to multitask and multi-purpose your various stands for different purposes. I'm doing this all the time. I can't tell you how many microphone stands I have in the house, probably 20 or something like that, because just like the microphones, they all have different purposes. And then lastly, you really probably want to pick up, and all of you should because it's totally free, Audacity. I've mentioned this to my students in the anthropology of sound and music, and some of you I think have already used this. It's available in all the formats, Mac, PC, and also Linux. Totally free. Just download it and you'll be able to get started with it. And let's talk about that then. So this last part is talking about post-production and storage of audio. So for the post-production part, we're really talking about taking the file and then uploading that. In between the upload, if you want to improve on or alter your sound file, then we get into this post-production use of Audacity. Now the first step is going to be, if you're using a phone, you'll download the file from your phone. Various ways to do this. You can often plug in your cable to the computer and share it that way. Voice Recorder Pro will actually allow you to share this over Bluetooth, which is what I typically do. Or I download the file from the service here. It's totally free to use. And then I just simply upload it into my program, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Now, again, I really recommend you always use the WAV or AIFF. There's another format out there called FLAC that I haven't seen on audio recorders, but sometimes I've seen with sites where I upload some of my music, like when I put my music up on iTunes or Spotify or some of the other streaming services. Some of them will want a FLAC file. It just depends. And that's just another audio format. Again, avoid MP3 or M4A because they're really going to compress the audio. Now, if you're using a field recorder, you'll want to see exactly what your field recorder has. This particular Tascam model has that SD card, which I showed you earlier. You take the SD card out, make sure you have, they typically come, if you buy an SD card or you get it with a device, they typically will have this adapter. And then you'll simply take this and plug this into your computer. Most of our computers these days have these adapters. If you do not, if you have an older computer, reach out because there's a very cheap device that you can get right now on Amazon for like $3 or $4 that basically is a USB plug, and you insert your SD, your micro SD or your full-size SD, and it's the same thing. So you can get your anything off an SD card on any computer that you own, I guarantee it, as long as you have the right adapter. So just reach out if you have concerns. So the same process for both. We get this file to our computer. Then at that point, we may want to use Audacity as we've been talking about. So let me show you a little bit of what this looks like just to see what you're getting into. So in both cases, I could take my file. So right here, this is the file I recorded from the soccer practice, and I simply uploaded that into Audacity. I can take any file I have on my computer that's an audio file, and I can easily put that inside of Audacity. And then I hit play on it. And that was actually a sound effect I was trying to do for the title of this video. And so again, you can go in and make adjustments. Audacity is really easy to use. I can easily cut some of the undesired audio at the beginning and the end. Like if you're recording this for a class project as a student or your faculty, you're recording a lecture, you could cut out, say, the noisy beginning and end of the class. Just all I'm doing is selecting that, hitting the delete key. Then I hit my save key. And actually, it's going to make me export this. So we'll export this as a second file. And we'll call it 2B. We'll hit save on this. And then what you're going to discover is when I load this into Audacity again, is what will happen is it has deleted then that undesired audio at the beginning and end of my file. So that's really easy to use. You don't have to go in and do a heck of a lot if you want to make that kind of adjustment, say for a recorded lecture. Or if you're doing your field recording project for this class, the Anthropology of Music and Sound, and you don't want some of your audio in your final samples. You want to use these for class samples just to play or to incorporate in a video or even a PowerPoint that you're creating. You can do that same operation here in Audacity. Super easy to do. When you get into other operations, if you want to increase the volume, like when I play this here, this section, two things you're noting: that voice from the soccer field is a little hard to hear, and you're hearing all that hum. That's the sound of the ambient environment around me. So again, it wasn't the best field recording condition, but it's really instructive for our video here today. A couple things I can do with that. One thing is I can adjust the level, and I'm just going to select again the section of audio. So just here for the section you want to adjust. Again, if I have a sound that's peaking, I could delete that, and then that way I've immediately eliminated those issues. And as you can see, that was pretty easy to do. I didn't have to do much. Now, if you're a perfectionist, of course, there could be a jump or skip or gap in that audio. That's something to think about if you're super picky, depending on the context. If I want to adjust the gain or the level of this, I'm just going to go to my effect menu at the top, and I'll click on amplify. Students in our class, I encourage you to really experiment with all these sounds and different approaches. Some very cool effects if you want to do anything funky or interesting, like add a wah-wah effect or distortion or any kind of filter or processing. You can do a ton of stuff, again, with the freely available and easy to use Audacity. But in this case, I just want to adjust my amplification of the audio so I can amplify. Audacity will automatically give you a recommended level. My personal use of this, I've always discovered I cut this number in half because my audio peaks if I go at 12 dB adjustment. These are just decibel adjustments. And if you're curious about decibels, you can think of the decibel of, say, a jet engine, like 100 decibels, or a really loud concert, versus maybe me talking here, which is much lower decibel. I don't know the range if it'd be 10 or 20. But if I just do an adjustment of 5, it might be good enough. We'll try that out. And when I play it now, it's a little louder. I can hear the robot voice, but I'm again hearing sounds of the raindrops hitting the car being picked up on my cell phone. And I'm also just hearing some hissing, which is probably just cars and the wind and maybe just birds and kind of nature. So what I could try is go in and do simple equalization. Kind of just depends on what I want to do. But if I go to my graphic EQ, that's going to be my friend on this. Now, we won't get into the whole theory of equalization, but what you're having here are different frequency ranges. Higher ranges up here, lower ranges here. And you can think of this if you play the drums. A cymbal has much higher pitch frequency, maybe in 10K or 15K, whereas a kick drum, a bass drum that is giving that thumping that people like in clubs, that really kind of evocative thump that makes people enjoy a lot of music, that's maybe around 40 hertz, way lower than the cymbals. And what audio engineers try to do is really compensate for the different volumes of different sounds or musical instruments that are being played or recorded, and also the different frequencies. So if you're doing a mix and you have a lot of instruments all occupying that same sonic register or area of frequency, you get a lot of muddiness in the mix. And believe me, I'm not great at it, and I struggle all the time with this. But if you want to make some simple adjustments, you could take down what I'm hearing here is maybe maybe some pink noise or something like that. I'm perceiving it as higher pitch, and what I recommend is kind of just use your ear. Go back to my graphic EQ, and let's see what happens if I reduce the higher bands, the higher frequency bands, and see if that helps any. I don't notice a lot. I can go back to it and make some additional adjustments. Again, I'm just kind of guessing. And I don't, usually these are actually labeled. They will actually label the frequencies. They haven't in this case. Let's see. Okay, that definitely took out the highs. Listen to it now. So we have no more hiss, but then listen to the sound. Yeah, to me, it's losing some of the presence of that sound. And I apologize. I'm only recording this audio off the computer into my microphone, so you're not getting the best quality here listening to this. But I could undo that. If I hit Command Z, it'll undo the equalization. And I have that back again. So sometimes in doing EQ or these adjustments, you lose some of the presence. And what I could do is actually go back in and maybe try instead, again, just experiment. You can always go back to your previous version. Maybe I might want to do my noise reduction. We could just see what that looks like. And this is just has a sensitivity, a frequency smoothing ratio, and then a noise reduction. So what I want to do is first click Get Noise Profile. And then I think it's going to do maybe a pass through this to try to figure things out. And then I'll hit OK. Wow, and look how radically it changed our waveform here. That's actually, I think, pretty good. That seemed to help a little bit. So whatever that hiss was, that noise, I think that really did a good job with it. Now, just to show you, there are other programs out there that you can use. Neutron, made by iZotope, is something I really recommend. You can actually sometimes get free versions of this. They have versions out there sometimes just based on, I don't know, I guess marketing or something, where they're trying to maybe get the word out about their product. But what's cool about some of these, and this is just in my digital audio workstation, is you can really get sophisticated versions of this. Let me just try to. So what I would do for something like this is I would go into this program. This one's called Neutron. And some of this gets very sophisticated. Again, people are doing like audio production and correction using artificial intelligence. So this has what's called Mix Assistant, and you can tell it ahead of time that your track is a particular type. In this case, I'm just going to see what it comes up with. I hit Next, and it will auto-detect. I guess let's just go ahead and tell it that it's a dialogue voice. And then I'll hit Next, and it will wait for me to play the audio. I hit play, and it's doing this analysis. It's doing EQ, sonic sculpting, compressors, and then I hit accept. This is graphically showing me in real time how it's adapting to my audio. This is the adapted audio, and this is my original audio. And we actually do see the frequencies. So I was wrong. The hiss is not anywhere in like 14K like a cymbal. And what I'm watching here is as the sound is going, I'm just trying to see if the voice is not talking, where the movement's happening. It looks like it's in the 3K to 6K. I'm also getting kind of a low hum here that has nothing to do with that voice. I'm also hearing the rain hitting the car. So, once again, try to think about what's going to work for you. I think for most of you, working with a program like Audacity is really easy. You can make simple adjustments. Again, make your adjustment, select the audio, add the effect or noise reduction technology you're trying to do, and then make sure you go to export. If you want to save it as an Audacity file, hit save or save as a project. But if you want to actually use the audio, then you want to export that, say, as a wave, which would be my recommendation. So that is, again, any audio editing or post-production that you need to do. If you're not going to do this, don't even worry about this step because, again, it can get a little complicated, although I think Audacity is pretty easy to use. So your final step is going to be uploading to your class. Now, if you're a student in my class right now, let's have a conversation offline because you might be doing some different things with your audio files if applicable. If you're showing this inside of PowerPoint, what you can simply do is you're going to record, and I'll have a video for you on this. You're going to record your PowerPoint presentation, save that as a video, and upload it. You're all learning in this class how to use Canvas Studio, which is a great technology or technique to know for all your other classes in Canvas. That's why we're using it this quarter. But you can actually play that live, and then that will be recorded to your PowerPoint presentation, which will be that video file you might create for your final projects. If you're a faculty member, you have a couple choices. You can upload the media to your files area inside your class, which I'll look at with you, or you can record it or upload it into Canvas Studio, which I think is a much better option. So if we go to our class page, I'll just show you the first version. Again, I'm not going to recommend this. I just think Canvas Studio is a little easier to use. But what you would do is you would simply go to the upload, and if I want to record a file from my desktop, I'll just choose that file. So let's go to my desktop folder, and I'm going to just bring in that voice robot sound that we were looking at, and I'll upload that. It's really small, and you can see the progress there. This is in this case alphabetical, and so it's right here. So with any file, I can send it, copy it, move it, delete it, share it to Commons, send to. If I click on it, it should allow me to play it. And it's telling me it's queued for conversion. Okay, so actually this is another reason I would recommend that you use Canvas Studio, because I've noticed with Canvas Studio it's much quicker. And what I'm going to do here then is upload it into my class page. One thing you'll notice is a little different. If you upload a PDF, that will actually come up as the under the documents. If I go to my course documents and I try to find that file, remember it's called Robot, it doesn't come up. And the reason is Canvas has identified that as media, so you'll instead want to go here, which is your course media tab or icon, and then I would include my voice robot sound, and I'll hit save, and let's see if it's converted. It should play it. And indeed it's there. And I'm not going to leave that in because that will be confusing, but that is how you would use your Files tab to upload that particular media file, which is, let's say, your class lecture if you're a faculty member, and then you'd simply go in and place that wherever you want it to be. I recommend that you use Canvas Studio. And Canvas Studio is so easy because you can create collections. Look how easy it is, though, to upload this file that I have recorded. So I click on the add at the top right corner, and I can actually drop it in, or I can browse my files. I'm just going to drop it right in. Here's my same voice robot file. And it's super quick. It's actually quicker than using the last technique. And it'll tell you it's uploading. Again, if you upload a video file, this takes much longer and much longer to process. But you could see it was really quick to process. So I click on this, and it has a nice little waveform, and then I can hit play. And the file is ready to go. And as you know, the exact same step to take if you want to insert this into your class, you're going to go to the page where you want it to be. Wherever that happens to be, we'll just do a test here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go to Course Media. I'm going to go to my tab that has all my Play Pause It, Canvas Studio 3C, YouTube. Click on Canvas Studio. And everything is going to come up. I can again search by collection. I can choose my entire library. Consult my Canvas Studio video. I think it's pretty good for explaining some of this. And it happens to be right here because I just uploaded that file. I'll hit select. I can choose the display options if I want annotation and all that kind of stuff. I hit embed. And then I'll hit save. And let's just make sure that it plays the file from our page. I believe it should. The same luck to it, and I think the sound was right here. And indeed, it's available. Again, really think about how you plan to use this in your class. I think Canvas Studio is easy if you're doing an audio-only recording because it reads it as media. It allows you to put it in your class, and it's super easy to use. So hopefully that answers enough questions out there about all the various field recording options, about doing video and audio, about just doing audio. a little bit about the technology involved and some of the things you might have to purchase, and then also using Audacity, the freely available program, to edit any of your field recordings or your class lectures, and then talking a little bit about uploading it primarily to Canvas Studio, which is my recommendation. You have any other questions out there, whether you're taking the class with me or you're a faculty member trying to think about recording lectures for your class, please reach out. I'd be happy to sit down with you over Zoom and have a little bit of discussion here about audio and sound, field recording, technologies, and techniques. Thanks for listening. I'll be back with more videos in this series helping you through technology and media and answering any questions you might have about both of those issues.